Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about A Thousand and One Nights and the concept of Orientalism. I would say that this is probably one of the most prominent influences that this particular book had, and a worldwide influence. This isn't something that just kind of bled out into the regions around where this book was, first written, where it originated. But it's something that really kind of took the world by storm and really made the world aware of what we call the concept of Orientalism. So, what is Orientalism? Anytime you have a term like that is used in describing a concept that is associated with literature, it's going to be widely defined. And so this is in studying Orientalism and reading different people's definitions, scholarly works and things like that. This is my kind of conglomeration of those definitions of Orientalism. What I would venture that Orientalism is, especially in the way that it's viewed from something like A Thousand and One Nights, Arabian Nights, is whatever it is that sort of glamorizes, exoticizes, or eroticizes that Middle Eastern culture. So let's kind of break down those different things. What does it mean then to glamorize the Middle Eastern culture? So anytime you look back, and I use cartoons a lot as my reference point because cartoons are very telling, and they're also very allegorical, and that's one of the reasons they are so telling. If there's something going on in society, it's going to be told somehow, some way through a cartoon. Yes, cartoons are generally made for children, and but who takes the children to go see the cartoons? The parents do, and so there's always going to be a message for them as well. So one of the things that you see glamorized from Middle Eastern culture are things that maybe not everyone sees as glamorous. And one of those things would be the the treatment of women. Now, you think, well, how can the Middle Eastern treatment of women, how can that be considered something glamorous? Well, it's not, but it gets glamorized. So what I mean by that is we read about in Arabian Nights clearly how women are treated. And whenever something like that is put into an art form to be viewed for entertainment purposes, it's being glamorized. You see this happen a lot of time with serial killers. Documentaries are made, movies are made about them, books are written about them, and it almost makes it seem cool. And some people do look at it as being, cool serial killer, and they go on to kind of worship in a way these serial killers. It's the same sort of way with the Middle Eastern culture. Things that we might see as maybe harmful to women or backwards as far as women's rights or the lives that women are allowed to live, that sort of thing. Um, Often gets glamorized in whether it's paintings or it's literature. You see that happening um, with Orientalism, and you certainly see it in a Thousand and One Arabian Nights. Even though, I mean, look at the position these two daughters are in, the daughters of the Vizier. So he was like, although as a dad, he loves his children, he didn't want this to happen to his daughters. They almost felt as if, well, that's our role. We know, we'll sacrifice ourselves to keep that from happening to other people. And so they ended up in this position. And we see what was going on with the life of the queens and the mistresses or the maidservants. Not only the things that they did as royalty or dwellers of the palace, but also the consequences of what they did. They were put in their place. And so it kind of glamorizes their lives. They can go off and have these, affairs clearly with, with the second wife that we read about in the introduction, or that I told you about in the introduction, when she and all the mistresses went out into the courtyard. This was not their first little tryst, this is something that clearly they would do every time the king left. And so, that we don't look at something like that as being naturally, I guess, as being cool or something that would be morally correct, but it's glamorized in a story like this. And oh, that's the way they do it, because there are harems, there are orgies, and you hear about the kings having many wives and all of this. And so that's glamorizing some things of that culture that we wouldn't necessarily just on an everyday basis would think was okay. It kind of brings in also the part about exoticizing and especially eroticizing the Middle Eastern culture. You see examples or read about examples of all of these exotic behaviors and exotic and erotic ways that the women dress. A lot of the erotic ways just have to do with women. I mean, they were just, completely eroticized back then, and exoticized as well, because they were, always, whenever you see a movie with an Arabian woman or a Middle Eastern woman, she's got on this, the dark, heavy eye makeup, and she's got on oftentimes the skimpy outfit. Where actually, the movie that we're going to be watching, I really thought really hard a lot about it. Do I even want to show this to you? Because the princess in this movie wears such a tight, skimpy outfit in this region. Really not very appropriate. I do put a disclaimer in my syllabus about, movies like that may show things that are a little bit inappropriate. I'm hoping you can move past that and look more at the the other types of Orientalism, or the other examples of Orientalism. There's certainly plenty. So let's move on. So besides the skimpy dress, and it's also occupations, belly dancing, fortune telling, where you see lots of long nails and glamorous jewelry, big earrings. You see things that are associated with maybe magic or the supernatural. Oftentimes you will see the harems, with the flowy sheer, I don't know what they're even called, but the tents that have the billowing like curtain kinds of things all around. And you've got they served a purpose. I mean, those things really did exist. They weren't always beautiful like that, like you see them in the movies and stuff, but they served a purpose to keep the bugs out. But they're big and flowy and kind of meant to be, excuse me, yawn, you know, luxurious and exotic. And even when you see, if you think about a movie like Aladdin, when you see people in the marketplace, they all look really exotic. You don't see anyone in like what would be considered everyday clothes. I mean, they're all, wearing the billowy pants or the big scarves, and they're all just kind of all done up. It's not that way everywhere you go in the Middle East. I mean, it's not all exotic looking. There are some things that look um, very Western. But what happened was, when books like this were being written, they were being played off as Western culture is up here, Eastern culture is down here, and not in a way of intelligence in any way, but more in a way of the cultural aspect. And so it's almost as if the Western culture, and this was started by the Europeans. Yes, it moved to America, clearly. But it started with the Europeans, where they had kind of the mindset of, we need to be the almighty rescuers of the Eastern culture, bring them into modern society. And so they look at every aspect, or they depict every aspect of the Middle Eastern culture as being a little bit barbaric. Still, everyone carrying around the big old, machete looking swords, and like we think of people think of Texas, everyone's got a gun. Well, it was kind of back then the way with the Middle East. Everyone's carrying around a big old, sword to slice your head off if you do something wrong, especially if you're a woman. And there were other things. They considered a lot of the Oriental culture, not Oriental, sorry, Middle Eastern culture, to be dishonest, always trying to trick you, if in the marketplace, or steal from you if you were a shopkeeper. Kind of like Aladdin was depicted, the street rat. He's always out there to steal something, and so they're always kind of on the lookout, because that's just the way that culture is. And so all of those kind of entail Orientalism. Whenever you see something that looks very stereotypical, whether it's a painting, a sketch, a book cover, a movie poster, or if it's just if it's written a synopsis or a story or whatever, these stories of the Arabian Nights, that are very kind of talk about that culture as being in a very stereotypical way. That's basically Orientalism. It really stereotypes, and really even kind of makes up parts of that culture that really weren't always that way. Certainly, as we speak and everything, there's a little grain of truth and a lot of what is written about all these different theories and stuff. And certainly that's one of them. It's not all lies. It's not like they just made a bunch of stuff up, but they kind of took it and then made it bigger and more of whatever it already was. More raunchy, more skimpy, more illegal, or whatever. Um, and kind of ran with it, and then it eventually all got called Orientalism. So you have things that are associated with that culture that are just kind of blown out of proportion in one way or another, and that is Orientalism. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it's kind of got you thinking a little bit more about those influences, and how then that has affected, moving forward, of course, from the time of the Arabian Nights, how that then impacted society really globally. And it did, and quite frankly still is. Still, if you haven't been over to the Middle East, how do you think about the Middle East? When we think about, a lot of times we think about camels, we think about, things that are very stereotypical, which is, it's kind of crazy that we still do that, even though it's a big modern society, so much more modern than we think about a lot of times. They have malls over there. Did you know that? And so I hope this kind of got you thinking about those influences. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you guys had a great Easter weekend, enjoyed your time off. And this is actually going to be kind of not very much work this week. I want you guys working on your presentations as much as you can. And we're going to have a movie this week, so it's going to be an easy week, and I hope that we all enjoy it. I will see you guys tomorrow at 12 o'clock for our instructor-led discussion group. See you then.